If you knew Maya now, because she is such a gentle soul, it would be hard to imagine her being having any behavior issues in a classroom or being that kid in the classroom. But she was.
Do you like this one?
I don't mind this one. Actually, the last 2 years have been really tough for her in the classroom, just because she has been witnessing a lot of violent incidents and a lot of aggression, a lot of behavior that's upsetting her, and it's also leading her to have, she just had some anxiety.
What is it? Maya, fantastic.
Maya is 18 years old. She was diagnosed with autism when she was around 2.5 years old. She also has an intellectual disability. She is in grade 13 and she's doing incredibly well. She's really happy and she loves it, and it's been just a really good journey for her. But we definitely did not start that way, and I didn't expect it to end up like that. She had no language and she was clearly very developmentally delayed. We did do preschool and we had all the supports in place where we anticipated a really smooth start. So it was disappointing when we started her in kindergarten and we saw an increase in behaviors. We saw a lot of aggression. She was hitting other children. The behaviors that she had, like spitting, were making her just really socially awkward.
Are you excited about going to school?
No.
No? I think, right from the beginning, it was just really apparent that there was one student in particular who needed some special resources. Like he wasn't getting the support that he needed in the classroom. And it became really a lot more obvious kind of within the first month of school, where he was lashing out and hitting the teacher and hitting other students. There was a lot of aggression. There were times where the kids had to be evacuated. Either they were locked into the classroom and that child was outside of the classroom trying to find his way back in, banging on the doors sometimes, yelling and screaming. Or, like I said, they would be evacuated. And either one of them, they're both scary for 8-year-old kids in grade 3. So it was hard. And then, afterwards, they would come back into the classroom and they'd have to have some sort of debriefing session with the teacher to try and get them back on track so that they can get back to learning. And I think for a lot of kids, it's traumatic.
Do you want this?
Yes.
Nice. Look at that. It's all done. Fantastic.
We brought in her behavior consultant who'd been working with her since she was about 3.5, and we were able to figure out the function of that behavior. At the time, because Maya was nonverbal, sometimes you have a tendency to assume that a child who can't communicate is more antisocial, and she actually wasn't. She was in an environment where everybody was socializing and speaking in the way they socialize, and we hadn't given her a way to do that on her own. And it was because we had targeted behavior support that we were able to overcome that, and I can sit here and say that school has been, although it has been a lot of work, it has been a really positive part of her life.
I remember when you put it into the balloons as well. Do you remember? And you made those little stress balls and used those. We were seeing changes in her behavior at home. I think a lot of it was around anxiety, but also just becoming more aggressive herself. And then just changes at night as well. Like oftentimes she didn't want to sleep. One of us would have to go in and lay down with her. And there were many times where she just did not want to go to school. And I would say, okay, well, sleep in for a bit, especially if she hadn't slept all night. I'd say sleep in and I'll take you in a little bit later. It was tough because she wasn't always there to have the learning experiences that she deserves.
I can say without a doubt that having a child with a disability and trying to keep them in school and trying to keep them in a place where they exist and they're dignified and they're always learning, it's exceptionally challenging. For my family, we've walked this journey of constant advocacy, getting politically involved in order to make sure that she's safe and secure in learning. One of our biggest challenges, I would say, has been staffing and always ensuring that the people that she needs to be with her are there. Sometimes the trained individuals don't exist in the school system, so the responsibility is on us to make sure that that trained support is there. And she has a lawyer as part of her educational team. And I think that speaks volumes to the lengths that families have to go through just to have what everybody else has just by dropping their child off.
the focus is always on the children who are misbehaving or the children who have these big emotions and self-regulation issues. And then you have our kids who are trying to learn, and some of them have learning issues as well, but their learning isn't being addressed. Any of their needs aren't being met. I totally believe in inclusion. I think that it works, but I think that where our school board falls short is when anytime there's like the aggression and the violent component. That's where I think it's really hard, because our teachers and our administrators are not equipped to deal with that. If we're going to have, full inclusion and have it work effectively, we have to have child and youth workers in every school. So I know our school has one. We have 650 students. Like, the chances are you're going to have at least one or two in every class that need supports. All of these resources that the government is cutting back on, those are the ones that, if you're going to make inclusion work, it has to include more kind of frontline workers who actually know and have the experience and the education to deal with these kids, so that those kids can learn as well. Like, they're missing out on a lot of learning time. We have to have better resources and better support for these kids. And then also the kids who are witnessing trauma and witnessing events happening in school, they need support as well. Because I'm sure, even for the teachers after a lockdown or an evacuation, those teachers are traumatized, and then they're having to have conversations with these 20 or 30 kids in a classroom, and they're already, you can see, like, they're shaking and they're already, like, they're upset, and yet they're being called on to be social workers and psychologists and child and youth workers. That's not their job.
Was our schools actually ever built or intended to be inclusive? Because all we've done is try to add a couple of things to a foundation that was never inclusive. And I think that's what we're seeing. I always feel like when we use language like violence, which is so alienating and so scapegoating and fear-mongering, it's with the purpose of creating that homogeneous ideal classroom. And that ideal classroom does not include neurodiverse learners. It just doesn't. Our schools need to, every building, it needs to look at itself and say, do we have the behavior supports in place for our school community? Not for that child or that child, but for the school community. Are behavior supports in place? Are the emotional supports that our children require in our schools, so that every single child is in a position that they are ready to learn? To look at whether or not we are taking our marginalized populations and becoming a place where we will help people elevate and have opportunity, or are we a place that is contributing to continued oppression? It's not okay to let these kids slip through the cracks. Can I have some?